Okay. Good morning and welcome to this week's edition of NCompass Live. I am your host, Krista Burns, here at the Nebraska Library Commission. NCompass Live is the Commission's weekly online event where we cover anything that may be of interest to librarians across the state. We have guest speakers come in sometimes, and we have Commission staff come in and do sessions for us, as we have this morning. One of our staff people. We do these sessions every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. Central Time, and they are recorded. So if you're not unable to join us on a Wednesday morning, that's fine. You can go ahead and watch any of our recordings that we have out there. This morning, as I said, we have a staff person from here at the Commission. And my laptop is being very slow. There we go. Annette Hall, who's in our Talking Book and Braille service and is the Volunteer Services Coordinator. Is that the correct title for you? Okay. So she helps out with all of that downstairs. We have a lot of people that come in and volunteer and help us run the TBBS down there. So she's going to talk to us about how you can get volunteers to help out at your library and hopefully get things running. So I'm going to pass control over to you, and you can just go ahead and take it away, Annette.
Well, oftentimes we feel like there's just too much to do, that we can't possibly do it all ourselves, and we need some help. And often we'll say, I just wish I had somebody to do such and so. And that's the time that we could think of volunteers and say, I need to recruit a volunteer, I need to volunteer. So we're going to start right away with how to recruit people. There are 3 things to do. First, get ready. Then publicize your recruitment needs, and then do the follow-up. To get ready, today we're going to talk about the basics of who, what, when, where, why, and how. We're going to start, though, with why, because why is the most important question of the whole thing. We want to start with who, but we're going to start with why. Why in the world, if you had all the money in the world that you could need, why would you use volunteers? I posit that one reason is that the volunteers are a link to your community, and that sets the whole frame for your whole volunteer program and makes it go so much more smoothly. And of course, with the community backing you, you're able to work together and reach the mission and the goals of the library. For instance, this is from Citizens Information, and it's a list of reasons why people would want volunteers in their not-for-profit organization. And when you look through this list, pick out the statements that are connected to the idea that volunteers are a link to your community.
Some places have always had them, that it's just always been the way of doing things at some of the libraries, I guess.
And we don't think of that because that's the way it is. And that's the way we've always done it. But because those volunteers have always been there, they've been a flow of communication from the library to the community, and from the community to the library. So they've strengthened the link between the library and the community. And whatever we do in the volunteer program affects what happens in the community and the community's view of the library. So if people are having a really good experience as a volunteer, when they talk about the library and their experiences at the library, or why don't you go to the library and find out get some information, they have a good background to say the library is a good place to be.
It's great PR for the library, definitely.
It's very great PR. And the stronger this link is to the library, the better PR there is. And also, the better the community can help the library, the better the library can help the community. So knowing why you want these volunteers in the first place sets the whole tone for your whole program, because when you are absolutely committed to the importance of volunteers, it makes a difference in how you place them, how you take care of them, and how they feel about the library itself. The last statement is more a generalized statement about not-for-profits. For libraries, you might want to substitute, instead of board of directors, put trustees, the management structure of the trustees. They don't get paid, so therefore they're voluntary. To further illustrate this point, here's a quote from a regional manager of Red Cross. Volunteerism isn't just about people doing something for free. Volunteerism is about seeing a need and individuals mobilizing to help fulfill that need regardless of circumstances. Another thing that I might add is that if you think of volunteers as just being something you don't have to pay for, you're saying something subtle about your employees as well as volunteers, and what the value is of volunteers and what the value is of employees. But if you believe that these volunteers are helping you reach your mission, then it makes the whole volunteer program go much more smoothly and effectively. So what would you like these volunteers to do? You have some ideas now. You've got some jobs that can't get done without volunteers. I want you to also think about, I sure would like someone to, if I only had somebody that could do this, or someday I'd like to get this done. What would happen if you had a volunteer get it done for you? Maybe someday would actually be today.
Dream big if you can.
Yes.
Think big and see if you can find someone who can do it. Yeah.
And if this is something that needs your skills, what could a volunteer do to free up your time so that you can do this someday dream? But dream big. And then write it down. That's very important to get it written down. Get your ideas down. If you have the why and the what, the next three things, when, where, and how, fall into place. You know your schedule, and you know what times could be available for volunteers to come, what times you'd have time to train them and supervise them, and times that are just way too busy. And so it's just better not to have more volunteers at that time when you're too busy. It's not effective for you or the volunteers. And then when you think of where the volunteers are going to work, make sure you have the space and furniture and equipment that they can get the job done, and that you have a good idea of what exactly they're going to do and the supplies they need, the supervision and training. Even for groups that come in for a day, the supervisors here know exactly what they want the volunteers to do, whether they want the volunteers to process the books, then they have the books ready, the supplies ready, the tables all set, so that when the volunteers come in and get their orientation, they're ready to go and they feel like their time has been well spent. So if you think of all these things beforehand, no matter how informally or formally you do it, it helps the whole thing go smoothly, and the volunteers get a good experience. And they could go back in the community and tell the community about it.
Yeah, recruit some of their friends to come and volunteer.
Absolutely, and that really does happen. Once you know the why and the what, and you figured out the when, where, and how, then you're ready for the who. And when you are thinking of the who, start out with what aptitude or skill set you want these volunteers to have. That's the most important thing for a good, that's an important thing for a smooth running volunteer program, to focus on those skills and whether the prospective volunteers have the skills for the particular job that you want them to do. The next step is, where are the people who have those skills? And it's getting harder and harder as society changes, because it's harder to find those people. And sometimes you have to think about the second shift workers who might have time during the time that you need people, because the people you traditionally have used are either in the workplace, or they're busy taking care of grandchildren, or doing something else rather than just sitting there waiting for you to ask. So sometimes you have to be creative about where people could be that have the particular skill sets that you want. And sometimes it's a group that you didn't think about before. Maybe it's people that you need somebody who has high energy, and volunteers who are younger often have higher energy.
Oh yeah.
And so you can use that energy to get the work done that needs high energy to do. If you have someone who enjoys routine, repetitive jobs, there are a lot of library jobs that are routine and repetitive.
Yes, there is.
And need to get done. And so matching those people who have that skill set to do repetitive work with the jobs that are very repetitive is a good match. And vice versa, when you need a dreamer, you want somebody who has the ability to see the whole big picture and do the dreaming. After you've gotten the who, what, why, when, and where, there are a couple documents that you may already have. One is your application form and your job description form. And when I was preparing for this, I was interested to see how well they line up. You've already done the thinking, so to design a document is easy, because for the job description you need the title, what they actually do, and then the times, schedule, and supervisor, and then write down what it is that you want them responsible for and what their qualifications are. So you've already covered that when you talked about the who, what, why, where, and how, and then the general guidelines for volunteering at a place, like showing up and contacting the supervisor when you can't show up, and being ready for your work. Those general volunteer guidelines. The application form are things that you need to know from the volunteer. And so it's the basic contact information, and more the electronic contact information is important. The time that they're available, their interests and personal goals, and their skills and certifications. If you have someone coming in that's very interested in volunteering at the library, and they just have a wonderful dog, and he's so good, and so they've heard about your Read to the Dog program.
Oh yeah.
For your own risk issues, you need to find out if they and the dog have had a certification, because you want someone else to certify that this dog is an appropriate dog for your program. Otherwise, you're taking up too much risk.
Right. Sometimes I think a volunteer can be very, very eager because they really are interested in the library and want to help it, and they say, I can do this, 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 and all these great things, and you got to kind of slow them down a little and say, that's nice, but we do still have to follow some of these rules and things that we have to, make sure it's all okay for everything that they want to do. And it seems like from this, what you're talking about here, the documents, I'm sure some people may think of volunteers are easy, like you were saying earlier. It's they're free, just have them come in, do whatever. It's just as important to figure out all of these things for an actual person you're paying. The same exact things you need to figure out for a volunteer of what is the job description, what the qualifications they have to have, all the same exact things you've always done before. You just do the same thing for a volunteer. So it's not not a huge difference, really. It
really isn't. Sometimes it's a little bit looser in the volunteer program because you have somebody coming in for one day, but you need to know what you want them to do, what their responsibilities are, and I don't always have them fill out a full application form, but I get that contact information because I'm going to use it.
Oh yeah.
I'm either going to re-recruit or I'm going to thank them. I'm definitely going to thank them one way or another. So I need that contact information, and I get that right up front. And because they're coming for one day, I know what their interest is. So to recruit, we've gotten ready. We've figured out the why, what, and who, and the when, where, and how. The next thing is to publicize. You can do this either scattershot or laser beam when you're publicizing. A scattershot example would be to have an article in your newspaper, and it goes out broadly to the whole community saying, we'd love to have a volunteer that comes in and does this, and laser beam would be more pointed, and sometimes the more pointed, the better. If you know someone who has a skill set that you can use, ask them, because most people respond better to the direct ask than they do to the scattershot.
Personally ask them, say, I know you're interested in this, I know you have this, we really could use it at the library, would you like to come help out? Yeah.
That's right. And in between, you've got asking groups like retired teachers, because they have a great set of skills and they might want to come in. We've had retired teachers, we've had librarians, we've had technical people that know recordings and computers, and I've had a teenager who knew a lot about working with computers, that did some research for me and then designed a handout that we used. And so finding specific people or specific groups and asking. You won't get a volunteer just sitting in your chair. You've got to ask.
You have to be proactive about it, yes.
That's right. And then the third thing for recruiting is to follow up with your screening, selection, and placement. After the recruitment and you've gotten the volunteer, then the next thing is orientation and training. Orientation is a good place to talk about your mission and your values and the values of libraries and some of the philosophy of libraries and the importance of confidentiality, the importance of the freedom to get information, and some of those foundation aspects of libraries. And this will help people because they know about the library already and they have a generalized idea. But this is the time to be really specific about what your library believes. And this will help the volunteers to keep within their boundaries as they do their work, and not accidentally breach some of our of the values that we hold dear.
'Cause we know a lot of people out there have their own ideas about how the libraries work or what we do or things like that, and some good things to think of this, some not so good.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's definitely when I talk to people who don't work actually at libraries, in libraries, and I tell them things like that about the privacy and what, I think, oh, I would have never thought about that I have to worry about. Like, yes, we have these rules. And so yeah, if you're going to be bringing someone in who has not previously been in the field, like someone who's a professional who's been through library school or has worked elsewhere, obviously they know this already,
Yes.
but just a general community member is going to need a little intro to how we do things.
Yes.
Yep.
And I have coworkers in the health field, and so they're even stronger in their orientation, and they're very specific. You know, what if Bo Pelini came in here? Would you tell your mom? And they said, well, yeah, I'd tell my mom. I saw Bo Pelini. No, you wouldn't. It's his privacy. And so you will not talk about who you see or what they check out or what they're looking at, because we believe in their privacy.
Yep.
Then give them a tour, show them where the bathrooms are, you know, the information that you really need, and then the general volunteer information. This is where you sign in. This is how you keep track of your volunteer time. This is the phone number that you call if you're sick or something's come up with your family and you can't come in. Those general volunteer information guidelines, and then the guidelines for success, how to be a successful volunteer. And then, well, I think I've covered the procedures of signing in and where to put your coat and your umbrella. And then the training is more specific about how to do the specific task that you're going to do, because everybody wants to do it right. So this is the way to do it right. Or if it's a free-flowing thing, these are the boundaries, and this is the overall picture that I want you to accomplish. The orientation for our organization here for Talking Book and Braille Service doesn't take a lot of time. One reason is because our volunteers don't have direct contact with the clients or the patrons as much as other places. And they don't have, there are very few instances where they have access to records. And so our training isn't as detailed as it would be if a volunteer did have this kind of access.
So that's something you could also do if you're concerned a lot about that, what they have access to, come up with a project or something that they would be doing that wouldn't give them that access. Is there something that a volunteer could do that would keep them away from those privacy-related concerns or issues or the records or whatnot? There's got obviously things they can do that wouldn't breach any of that if by accident something does happen.
And if I have one coworker who even has her gardener sign, her gardening volunteers sign an oath of confidentiality, because she says she works in the health field, and the gardener could be out gardening and accidentally overhear a conversation.
True.
So even her gardening volunteers sign an oath of confidentiality. So that might be something you want to put on your application form, so that when they apply, they also sign. Another thing that we have is a statement that says you're not covered by workers' comp if you're a volunteer, and we're not liable.
That's important. Yes, definitely the legalities of it.
And so that can be put into the orientation also, as well as the application form, so that it's covered. The next thing I'd like to talk about is motivation. Volunteers' original motivation to come isn't always the same reason for staying. There's a saying, and I've been trying to look it up, but it's often people come because they believe in the cause, and they stay because of the relationships they've built while they've been volunteering. And that's important to know because their experience when they're volunteering has a lot to do with whether they're going to stay or not. Often people will come and say, I just love to read, but I work at the library. I want to be a volunteer.
That's why they think we all went to work at the library too.
Yes. And you can use that love of reading to get them in the door. And then to have their job lined up and having a good match for them reinforces their motivation for volunteering. If they come in and they see that you're ready for them and that you appreciate their time, they're willing to stay and get it done. And vice versa. If you look like you're scatterbrained, and they'll either feel sorry for you, boy, she really needs me, or they'll say,
yeah, this place doesn't even know what they're doing. Yeah.
And we really don't want to send that message at all. McClellan is someone who's described volunteer motivation in 3 areas: affiliation, achievement, and power or influence. And that's a very commonly used method of describing volunteer motivation. And it's used in placement as well as in recognition. If someone is motivated by affiliation, they like being part of a group. And at some times in our lives, we're motivated by affiliation more than other times. And the teenagers are ones that I really like to see come in as groups or come in with your friend and volunteer together.
Oh, yeah.
Because
peer pressure.
Yes.
Good kind of peer pressure.
Yes. And often they're at a time in their life where they want to be in a group together. There are some teenagers that beat to their own drum and like to do things that are quiet and like to get a job done or like to see that they've accomplished something. But often you can mix the two. And the best times we've had with volunteers have been when they've been in a group, especially youth. But they've come in a group as a girls' state or as a club, and they've enjoyed their time. So then they want to come in to do their government and politics hours.
Oh, right.
And they ask, could I bring a friend? And so they bring their friend. And I've actually had that friend come by themselves and say, could I bring a friend with me? So it's built on itself. So I've had third generation of teenagers because they've felt comfortable doing the job they've done, and they can bring their friend. It's nice. I've had good luck with volunteers also that are teens that have come and by themselves and want to get those hours done and work hard to get those hours done. And that meets their need. And so it's not a blanket statement, but it helps to know what is important to the volunteer. And sometimes it's hours, and we can work with that. And on the application form, we ask them what their goal is, if they have a certain number of hours that they need, because that helps us prepare. Achievement is getting things done, and you can tell that people are achievement oriented by their vocabulary. When you talk about them when you talk with them about previous volunteer experiences, they'll talk about the accomplishments they did. I have one person who comes to me after doing their job and says, I did 3 bags of this, or I did 7 bags of this, or I loaded up 3 carts and I did this and I did this. And so he's very achievement oriented. But I didn't stick him solely in achievement oriented.
Well, to get out their comfort zone a little bit too, maybe. Yeah.
And I found out the same volunteer is a marvelous leader of groups that come in, and people look up to him, and he is so calm and gracious with them that I've called him a host. You know, you're the host for the volunteer group that's coming in, because he can do it very well. And so it's a good match to have him do the achievement-oriented projects. It's also a good match to have him be a leader. And I don't even think that he realizes that he's influencing the group because he's just so gracious.
It's just what he does.
Yes. And then the people that are power and influence oriented are not people that want to do those repetitive tasks. That would drive them crazy. So give them something where they can feel like they've made an impact. And all of these people, whether affiliation, achievement, or power and influence, want to know that they made a difference. And so when you thank them, you thank them because they did make a difference. And I'll use the example of taking pictures. I've found that taking pictures of volunteers is very reinforcing, that they were so important that we took their picture. And even for groups, taking group pictures of them doing their work, and then sending a thank you and saying, you achieved this much, and list all the things the group did, and have their picture, and design the thank you around the picture of, or one time I made a montage and thanked them all individually, but had the montage as the big thank you, that they, as a visual thank you. For affiliation, they like to have their pictures taken as groups more often. For the achievement-oriented, I have taken pictures of them doing their job, so that they can say, "This is I narrate, and I narrate magazines, and this is a picture of me narrating." For the power and influence, they really enjoy having their picture taken with the most important person that you can think of.
So the head of the library, the director.
Yes. That and they appreciate that. And they, it's interesting to find out how important volunteering is to people. And when you've made it to their obituary page, you know that they've that it's made an impact on them when it's actually mentioned in their obituary, or in their vita, or when they want a job or they want a scholarship, and part of getting the job or the scholarship is documenting that they've been a volunteer. There's one time that you need to show appreciation to the volunteers, and that is called every time. Daily, when they get there, greet them, fluff their pillows, have their resources ready. You be the one that sharpens pencils for them so that they can do their job, and make very good use of their time and skills. That makes all the difference in the world. Think of the yearly ways that you can thank them. Some people appreciate knowing that they've put in another year at the volunteering at the library. Other people go, oh, is it 5 years already? Some people have personal times. I will often send cards to people on personal times, like their birthday. It's a really good time to thank them just by sending them a card and letting them know we appreciate them as a person. And that is actually the reason I have their birth date on my application form. I don't care about what year. I want to know the month and the day. So we can celebrate their birthday too. And then National Volunteer Week comes in the spring, really close to National Library Workers Week.
Oh, is it? Mm-hmm.
So that's a really good time to thank the volunteers and do something really special for them. And volunteers also like sporadic thanks.
Having a surprise is nice, yeah.
Yes.
You're not expecting it.
Uh-huh. And for just a couple minutes, volunteers are really kind-hearted, and they really believe in what they want, that they can help, and that they believe in the organization. The trouble they create, or the situations they create, often come out of goodwill rather than ill. Mm-hmm. The most troubling instances we have are volunteers that don't follow through on their commitment. Mm. And we think that they're going to come and they don't show up and don't let us know. And sometimes it's unavoidable, and sometimes they just don't have the skills yet to come to some place on time. Mm-hmm. And so we go backwards and we reiterate now, we expect you to come at this particular time. It's really important for us for you to come at that time, and we expect you to be there. So you let us know if you can't. And if it happens a couple times, we're going to ask you whether you think a different time would be better or a different job would be better, or maybe this isn't a good time in your life for this particular
Be very diplomatic
job.
about it.
Absolutely.
With them, yeah.
Because again, you're talking to the community.
Yes.
You're not just talking to a volunteer, you're talking to the community. So yeah, diplomacy is vital. And it might...
I think it sounds like, too, you need to make sure that they realize that, just like yourself, you had to realize volunteers are just as important a person in your library as the paid people. They need to realize volunteering isn't just something you do on a whim. That you come and, well, I was only a volunteer. They don't care if I don't show up. It's no big deal. They're not paying me. That it is just as important as and we do value you just as importantly as we do. So they kind of maybe need a little education about what volunteering really is all about. Sometimes I think they may think of this as it's a grand thing. It's a great idea. It'll look so good on my resume or on my college application or something. And then when it comes down to actually doing it, they don't really think through what it all really entails.
And the same thing for sloppy work. If you have to redo a volunteer's work, it takes you twice as long. So
you're not really getting any benefit out of it, yeah.
Not at all, and they aren't getting any benefit out of it. So it's sometimes we think, well, I have to be nice to the volunteer, and maybe I should let it slide, and it's not really a good idea to let it slide, because if they think that's okay to do, and that's acceptable, you're not going to, it's harder to build from that. And so to say, I really appreciate that you sat here and did this, but what we need, this label is going to stay on the book forever and ever, so we need you to do it just absolutely as straight and as tidy and neat as possible. And
instill a good work ethic in them, make them want to be proud of what they're doing. It's not just some lame thing where they're just sticking labels on and it's just volunteer to get my credit for my class or something. That, let them somehow make them be proud of what they're doing. Yeah.
That's right.
Take pride in your own work.
That's right. And some people need to be taught that, or maybe they know it, but they're hurrying too much. And it's like, quality is more important on this job than quantity. We really want you to do a fabulous job. And another instance that we have sometimes is that the skill of the volunteer decreases as they live their life. And so it's sometimes appropriate to find a different job that they're successful at, that they no longer have the top quality skills for their immediate job. So is there's another job that they could do that would be as fulfilling to them and as efficient for you. And sometimes that's really hard to talk about, but it's better overall to bite the bullet and talk about it.
Yeah, just find something else that's more tailored towards them. As things are changing.
Yes.
If they've been a volunteer for a long time, I can see how that could be hard to bring up that discussion. But there's always new things going on. You can say the same kind of thing in a diplomatic way of, here's a new great project we'd love you to work on instead. Why don't we switch you over into this area?
Yeah. You can always
try and put a positive spin on it.
Yes. And sometimes the volunteers realize that things aren't as good as they want, because they really want to do a good job. And often you realize it before they do, but often and we've had some that have been doing highly skilled work and have decided it was time to stop because they couldn't do it as well as before. Another instance is when volunteers have really bought into the organization and have volunteered a long time and start overstepping their bounds. And so when you have a lot of things lined up ahead of time that we've talked about with the job description, you can go back to the job description and say, your job is important. The job you're doing right now is important. And we value what you're doing. And I know you want to do some more things, but we don't have openings for you right now doing the other additional things. But we do value the job that you're doing now. And it's important for people to hear that. This is about thinking about your own volunteer program, and is it effective or isn't it? And these are questions that you can ask yourself. You can ask your coworkers at the library, and take time every once in a while to look over all of the questions. Some of them, the last couple, you think about every time the volunteers come in, because you appreciate that they did turn up, as they said, or they did come and spend the time, or they let you know if they hadn't. And when you realize that you don't take that for granted, you appreciate those volunteers more. Are there another way of evaluating your program is to think of the stakeholders for your library, and how are the volunteers helping the patrons? Because your end result is how the patrons get the material that they need. So how are the volunteers impacting that? My goal is that the books that we have get processed before they're announced by the National Library Service that we have them.
Mm-hmm.
And we always have the books all processed. We have the highest demand books processed right away so that the patrons can actually get those books as fast as we can get them turned around. How effective are the volunteers for the library? Is the library able to function well because of the volunteers?
Mm-hmm.
Are the staff happy with the volunteer program and the volunteers, or do you need to change some things? Funders, we're all accountable to people, and letting funders know about how many volunteers and how many volunteer hours
Mm-hmm.
is an easy measurement of how much community impact there is.
Mm-hmm.
And how much the community values the library.
Yeah. Yeah, if the people who give you your money, the city, the county, whoever, see that community members are willing to spend their own personal time, not paid even, to come in and help the library run, that makes an impression on them. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And how is the volunteer program working for the volunteers?
Mm-hmm.
Are they getting satisfaction out of it? The number of volunteers and volunteer hours is easy to measure. Having those sign-up sheets are the database that they enter their hours, and keep track of that is very easy. There are also other ways to evaluate your volunteer program. Independent sector every spring has the worth of the volunteer hours and figures that out. It's in Nebraska for 2009, which lags the United States data by a year. But in 2009, the volunteer hours were given a value of $16.67 by the independent sector. And that's the average earnings of production, non-supervisory employees that are non-farm, and then adding 12% for the benefits.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how they figure out the worth of the volunteer hours. So
nice.
That's a significant number.
Oh, yeah.
Another that you may be very familiar with is output and input, and if you take the output and you subtract the input, then you've got the value. So if you're putting in so much time as a volunteer services coordinator, and you've got your equipment and your supplies for recognition, and then you subtract that from the worth of the volunteers, you get the value of the volunteers. The problem with that is that it's hard to put a value on all the things that the volunteers do, because they can have such a big value on your patrons. Like if you have a program where they're reading to the dog, and a child turns and loves reading because they learned to read to a dog, how much value is that?
Yeah, that is definitely hard to measure in really quantitative numbers, or it's, yeah.
But treasure those stories.
Oh, of course, yes.
And share those stories, and share them with your volunteers.
Oh, yeah, tell them what the follow-up has been with that child if they weren't aware of what happened afterwards, after the Reading to the Dog program, yeah.
Actually, I love this quote: volunteering is the ultimate exercise in democracy. You vote in elections once a year, but when you volunteer, You vote every day about the kind of community you want to live in.
Mm-hmm. That's true, because you're putting your own self into what's going to come out of the community as a whole.
Mm-hmm. So we've come from the community to the community.
Yes.
We've gone full circle today.
No questions yet.
If there's something more that you want to know or want to have covered, just let us know.
Mm-hmm. Does anybody have any questions for Annette about anything that she talked about today? This is the last slide. Is this the last one? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You can type your questions into the question section on GoToWebinar if you want to, or let me know and I can unmute you and you can ask a question on your using your microphone. Or waiting. When we do put up the recording, I'll let you know we will have this PowerPoint will be up there as well, so you can refer back to all of the information that was in here. So you will have access to all that afterwards. Does it look like anybody has any questions at the moment? No?
Well,
Which is fine. Yeah.
Thanks for your time and your patience.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you very much, Annette. That was very, very interesting. Yes. No, especially I never knew much about volunteering myself. I haven't done it or had to supervise anybody doing it. But I like the idea. The thing that stood out most to me is the fact of it's just like someone you would pay, but they've got different reasons for doing it. It's more personal, possibly.
Yes.
It's not just for the paycheck and for whatever. It's got more personal, and you can really make use of that from them.
Mm-hmm. And it's a win-win situation when you fulfill their needs and you fulfill your needs.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, yes. Oh, no, someone just said no questions, just thank you for a great webinar. You're welcome. Okay. Okay, well, thank you very much for sharing with us. As I said, this session was recorded, and the recording should be up maybe this afternoon. We'll see. And as I said, the PowerPoint will be included in that, so you'll have access to that for yourself. I hope you will join us next week if my laptop doesn't, okay. Got a slow-moving laptop here on our wireless network. When our topic next week is about marketing to the tweens and teens in your library. Jake Rundle, who's a librarian at Hastings Public Library now, will be coming in to share ways that you can market to that the teenagers and get them to come in and use the library and participate in what the library is doing. And maybe you can get them to volunteer. Yeah. Get them in any way you can. So thank you very much, Annette. Thank you, everyone, for attending. We hope it was useful for you. And we will see you then next week on NCompass Live. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Get a recording done.